Mr. Loo, how do you make your first $1 million? Ladies and gentlemen, I found a record of how I made my first $1 million from my archive. Today, I'm going to show you all of it, okay, in a spreadsheet and share you some of the trips and falls and things that I done right. And mind you, you must watch it to the end because all the lessons are extremely important for me to come open and clean to you. Let's watch on, shall we? So I just changed my phone to the latest iPhone. And while I was downloading some files and uploading some files for backup into my iCloud, I managed to find some lost Excel files that have tracked all my finances and my assets, dated in year 2000 or so. And I thought it's very important for me to look at it, share my children. And one sheet struck me because that was the mark when I hit my first $1 million. And by looking at all these things I've done, I begin to be able to relate some of the stories of success and failures that I've made my first $1 million. And I would like to share them with you so that you won't make these mistakes and pick up some of the learning points and most importantly, what I did right. Let's watch on, shall we? So disclaimer, doesn't mean that I've gone through this journey, means you must go through this journey, okay? So let's go on. Many people say that making the first $1 million is always the hardest, and I agree with you. I want to show you my spreadsheet. I want to show my spreadsheet just a high level, and then I'll go into details, what I did right, what I did wrong. So this is my spreadsheet. It's dated 21st of February 2007, where I hit my $1 million mark. So I reached my $1 million mark in net worth at the age of 35 years old. That's pretty late, right? That's because I made so many mistakes, right? So many mistakes. And I wish that I had a chance not to make these mistakes. Many people could hit $1 million at the age of 28 years old, 32 years old, whatsoever. I made it when I was 35 years old. And it is so interesting to see the journey I've gone through. By looking at some of these things, we'll be able to see some of the experience I have. So I actually tabled down, right? So those days I owned some shares, Singtel, by the way, that time was dated the $3.37, and some dividend stocks that today I think most of them don't exist anymore. I have mini bond. Okay, some of y'all might know what mini bond is. Okay, Lehman Brothers is totally gone. I held some cash, not a lot. Okay, in total, I held probably about $70,000 cash spread across my entire family. And I've also lent some money to friends and put some money into Malaysian bank, and don't even know why I did it. My CPF was about 200,000 or so. It's spread across many different strange areas. Those days, do you remember we have got this thing called New Singapore Shares? And so, I thought it was quite interesting. And then, this is my wife's one. Okay, slightly less, but also 100 over thousand. This thing called PSP, I'll talk about it later in a short while. This is a performance share program by Singtel. My HDB then has a value of 290,000. I took a loan of 140,000, so a net worth of 150. Some people say, Mr. Loo, you should include that in your net worth. Anyway, those days I've included it. So I just crossed somewhere around 34, 35 years old, a $1 million net worth, right? Okay, and I did a projection for it, but that's not important. Let's go back to some of the lessons, shall we? The first $1 million is always the toughest. The subsequent $1 million comes much faster, may not be easier, but much faster than the first million. So I've got a lot of lessons on this. I want to share how I went through this experience to share with everybody all the key learning points. The first thing I want to say is that while I teach a lot about investments, a lot of things that I did in making my first $1 million got very little to do with investment. This is because, okay, compounding of investment takes a long time, right? It'll take a long time. So, it goes in a graph like this and gradually like this. So in the first period, making the first $1 million is really very difficult. And remember, investment can only happen if you got bullets to shoot. And in my early years, where I got bullets to shoot, right? So therefore, it is very difficult to make money in your early years through investments. And as a result, okay, you only lay the foundations of reaping this wealth early to be reaped at a later time. So the first $1 million was very difficult, and most of them was gotten through, okay, earnings, salaries. If you want to do well financially reaching $1 million early, you got to have a job and do really well in it. Okay, so this is very, very important. The job you do will give you the wealth that you need to accumulate later. But to accumulate and hit the first $1 million, bulk of it, in my experience, not necessarily through all experience, is going to come from salary, bonuses, earnings, right? So that's 100% through my experience in my first $1 million. This is where I want to give everybody a very, very important tip. Your job in helping you accumulate your first $1 million ideally should come from a growth company that's powered by stock options, performance shares, or so. Most of cases, salary growth are very slow. Bonuses are important, okay, but bonuses are only one part of the answer. I was pretty lucky. At that point of time, I was working in Singtel, and those days was the huge mobile phone growth, the paging growth, and the internet boom. So those days is not uncommon. I think in my peak, I've got an 8-month bonus before, and that's not just 1 year. I think a couple of years. And I was because I worked very hard, I did very well. We have this thing called performance level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 being the worst, 1 was being best. I think my early years, almost all the years, I have performance level 1. So I have the privilege of enjoying very fat bonuses. And because my performance was good, I was awarded quite a lot of performance shares as well. So all these adds together, give me quite a lot of earnings. Now, we need to know that most companies that can pay good salary, good bonuses, and performance shares tends to be company in the growth phase. And at point of time, Singtel was in a growth phase. I cannot say the same for Singtel right now, but I do know of many companies that are in what I call a scale-up phase, not startup, scale-up phase, preparing for IPO, exponential growth. I'm sure NVIDIA is one of them. Some high-tech companies is one of them. You should try to pick such a company if you want to have fat bonuses and fat pay. You need to work very hard. I'm sure you need to burn extra hours, work in weekends. That's what I did. But you'll be rewarded richly and handsomely. Now, it's also important for me to share that in 1997 Asia financial crisis, that really knocked the wind out of me. It's also important that you marry right. Okay, I've said this before, marry right. And husband and wife must have the same financial values, because it is important for husband and wife to work towards this financial goal of $1 million. Now imagine a husband working very hard and the wife drains all the money, or the other one, the wife works very hard and husband drains all the money. Then you will not get this cumulative effect. In the case of my wife and I, we work very, very closely towards this financial goal. We are a pillar of support for each other. Thus, it was easier in accumulating wealth towards a financial goal. So my wealth by itself, one person, is quite difficult, almost impossible to hit $1 million. But my wife added in as well. Now take note, both of us then were not very, very financially savvy. We were okay, but we committed to work hard, to put money into use, to save money and be a bit more frugal than necessary. And we then grow our wealth. And it's also important, at that point in time, I already have 3 kids. Okay, 3 kids, right? My first kid was born when I was about 39, and then after that, when I was 31, I have my second kid, and then 1 year after that, I have my third kid, right? So I was already a father of 3 kids, and yet we could work together to accumulate wealth towards a $1 million mark. If you remember at the spreadsheet, right, one of the most important foundation of wealth was CPF. Okay, CPF, CPF, CPF. Now, Mr. Loo, of course, is the founder of 1965, which is a CPF-centric movement. But I want to emphasize this thing. If you look at my entire spreadsheet just now, if you recall, CPF contribute a substantial, almost like 40% of my net worth at a point in time. I remember about 200,000 and my wife about 190,000. So cumulatively, we almost have 400,000 out of the 1 million net worth. That was largely because most of our effort has channeled into the 1M65 vision, that we put money in the SA, MA, and then we do not use our CPF to buy big houses whatsoever. And that allow the compounding power of CPF to accumulate very fast. So at that point of time, at about 34, 35 years old, we roughly about 400,000. Today we have 2 million. Okay, so the power of compounding will work for substantially in this growth. So it's important to take note that I always talk about the interest compounding part, but I didn't talk too much about it. But the salary contribution towards the CPF is a substantial amount of wealth as well, because 37% of your wealth goes into your CPF, and that's very substantial. So, and up to $6,000 or 37,740 goes into your CPF every year. So this one is a phenomenal growth. You just use it and stack and stack and stack, you see your wealth grow very fast. And I think that this is a cornerstone pillar of my wealth that we have built towards $1 million when I was about 34, 35 years old. There's one lesson I want to share with everybody from a trip and fall, a major trip and fall that I made in 1997. So in 1997, I just started working. I worked very hard in my university days to accumulate wealth as well. I was a real estate agent for a couple of years. I gave tuition on the side. I worked very hard towards my university degree. I worked also very hard to get a very good grades and got a scholarship. So all these cumulatively together contribute some wealth. I remember I hit about my first $10,000 savings, which are 5-digit savings when I was in 22 years old, and that's quite good for those days, right? And then I further accumulated my wealth, and when I graduated in 1997, I quickly rushed out to buy a house, buy some shares whatsoever. And then the nightmare of 1997 happened, which is Asia financial crisis. I lost everything. Everything was lost. Everything was lost. I incurred quite a huge debt. My dad, which is not a very high-paying salaried man, a teacher, came out and saved me. And that was a very humbling experience. So in 1997, my net worth was one big fat zero, zero. And then towards 2007, I've hit $1 million. So it took about 10 years to hit my first $1 million, right? From 2007, okay, to 2017, right? The millions increased substantially. So the first million took me 10 years. Subsequent millions, okay, were much faster, much faster. So it was a very humbling experience, but I want to share everybody this very important lesson, okay, this very important lesson, which is when you are young, you have the leeway to make financial mistakes. So remember, I was like totally gone, bankrupted, okay, only saved by my dad. I was at big fat zero in 1997, okay, but because time was on my side, I could work hard, I could reset again, I can accumulate wealth again. I took 10 years to accumulate to $1 million. For young people, you have the leeway to make financial mistakes. This is where I also want to reverse and tell everybody that when you are old, time is not on your side to make mistakes. So therefore, you shouldn't take a substantial financial risk that you cannot afford to stomach. The biggest financial risk that you can take is to not educate yourself financially. Okay, the lack of knowledge has destroyed many people financially. This is where I take a lot of effort in educating everybody. Please don't make financial mistakes. Be prudent in your investment. Form a financial safety net, and then layer on other financial layers. But let me reiterate again, okay? When you are young, you have the leeway to make financial mistakes, but when you're old, you don't, okay? You don't. Now, I also want to say that a lot of people believe that you can make a lot of money through entrepreneurship, and that is true, okay? But in the early years of entrepreneurship is usually financially draining, okay? I would strongly encourage everybody who have entrepreneurial passion, okay, to take the first phase of your life to accumulate some baseline financial wealth, to bring some stability to yourself before you embark on entrepreneurship. That was what I did. I took the first phase of my life to stay in corporate life, build wealth, build stability, and then with that, then I ventured into entrepreneurship. A lot of people have to cut back substantially once you become entrepreneur, and that is true. In my case, I didn't really need to suffer much because I've accumulated some savings and formed a financial safety net, not just in CPF but in cash as well. I don't think my kids ever felt that when we become entrepreneurs, we ever had to cut back on our lifestyle in a substantial way. So actually, I think it's important to tie yourself down to a stable job in the initial phase, right? When you graduate, and all the way to a certain midpoint in life, to accumulate wealth first before you think about entrepreneurship. Else, you may stand certain financial risk that is unnecessary. I want to say this for those people who are always looking at people who say that, oh, I'd invest in businesses, very cool. One of the fastest way I realized that people lose wealth is to invest in startup when you are not in a position to, okay? It's a terrible way of investing. You should only invest in businesses and startup only if, okay, your baseline foundation layer is done and you have layers and layers and layers of S&P 500, NASDAQ, or globally diversified index. And on top layer, you put a small little drop in there. If you are not VC, you're not a trained angel, most startups will burn you up. So don't even think of that as an investment. I want to say this, okay? Remember, back in my mid-30s, I actually have a substantial portfolio of dividend stocks then, right? I now, in retrospect, I need to say this with the risk of insulting a lot of people. Dividend stocks are for ape and aunties lah, for heaven's sake, right? That means when you are old, you cannot afford to take some risk. You want to see cash coming in, then you take. This dividend investment is meant for people in the later years of life, okay? To succeed in dividend investing, okay, first you need to be a good stock picker, okay? Most of the dividend stocks I invested in all died. Mini bonds died, Babcock died, Macquarie died, PST I think also died. Okay, Singtel is half dead, right? So all of them died, right? And there's another thing that many people didn't realize is most people when they take their dividends, they don't reinvest. They take it, they keep in a bank or they spend it. In order to use the power of compounding, you got to reinvest all your dividend stocks, right? And that's your dividends from your dividend stock. And that's quite rare to see people actually doing it. Someone actually told me this, investing in dividend stocks is like robbing yourself of your future capital appreciation. And I truly agree with that. So I would suggest that a globally diversified index is a lot more rewarding than putting money into dividend stocks, especially in your early years. In your latest years, yes, that's why you need to think of all these things. But in your early years, you can afford to take some growth and take some risk, which I did not do enough. Okay, I did this thing called stupid indexing. Okay, stupid indexing. So if you look at my portfolio, I have a certain segment into STI index, which is pretty silly and stupid. And I talked about this before. I just want to say that now, Straits Time Index is what I call super terrible index, and what an idiot I was. And also note that I have very little, in fact, almost no holdings, except a very small holding S&P 500 then. Had I chose the right stocks to put in, which is S&P 500 or a NASDAQ or globally diversified index like MSCI World Index, right? Today, I will substantially grow my wealth a lot more. That mistake is something I wish I could undo, but anyway, life is in such a way I will share with you this experience now. You may not know I actually have two lines there that says friend one, friend two. I actually lend money to people. I just want to say this, okay? If you want, give or don't give, there's no lend. Try not to lend money to people. Usually when you lend money to people, you can forget about it coming back, okay? Now, even though these are trustworthy people as ever, you know what you should do? Just give. If the person needs $10,000, just give them 1,000, okay, and write off that entire thing altogether. Don't think that you will ever get it back. Okay, this is my experience as well. 9 or 10 case, I never get back the money. So don't even think about it. Okay, don't even think about it. A lot of people ask me, Mr. Loo, you're very thrifty all the years, right? Okay, I say yes. In my early years, I was very thrifty. I consider being thrifty a curse because you forgo yourself a lot of things, right? But it should be a curse only in early years so that you accumulate enough firepower to let your wealth grow substantially in later years. So in later years, you don't need to be thrifty anymore. I'm not very thrifty nowadays. I enjoy life. I buy a Malaysian house when I want. I eat whatever things I want. If I want to enjoy certain things, I just enjoy it, right? Now, I don't go all out and spend money like crazy. But in my early years, I was extremely thrifty, frugal, right? Now in my later years, when the wealth already is on this spike, I don't think I need to do that anymore. So being thrifty has a timeline. So you suffer in your initial years for something good that will come later. Okay. So bear that in mind when we talk about thrift. So just to sum up, my experience looking back at how I achieved my first $1 million has a lot of trip and falls. Had I learned to be a bit smarter and wiser, I've arrived there easily, maybe by 30 years old or so. But because I made so many mistakes, okay, and only did one or two things right, you know, I have it later. Fortunately, those mistakes has shaped how I think. I was very fortunate I have a good financial mentor that mentored me all the years. Okay, it took me some years to learn, but eventually I got it right. So I hope that these lessons that I've made in my early years will help you shape your financial journey and financial wisdom so you do not need to repeat those mistakes that I made. Fortunately, my mistakes need not be yours. Okay, that's why I share with you and hope that you will avoid these and become millionaires much earlier than I do and become multi-millionaires much faster than I do as well. Okay, with this, thank you, and I'll see you in a day or two. Bye bye.